What's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today, you and I are going to be talking about some potential features that I would love to see in a future iteration of Bitwig. If you're not caught up, we are on 5.1 beta 4, I think, and we got some really sick additions. My favorite being that we actually have a dedicated clip device now, which is super awesome. But there are some big things and some small things that I think can actually be applied to either the next smaller update or a bigger update in the future. So if you like to talk about Bitwig, or you're maybe learning and being on the fence and learning about what features are still missing, or if you have your own suggestions, then leave them in the comments. But let's go ahead and just create a discussion, hopefully keep it civil, and figure out what Bitwig could still use in the future as far as what my needs are, or rather what I would like to see. So the first thing is grid racks. I think that this is probably a bigger update than, a small patch or whatever. But the thing with this is that you can't hoist, I guess, certain devices or like device change within the grid inside a rack. And why this is tedious is because if I were to maybe say something like a compressor and I want to use this, I can't put this inside of the grid inherently. So what I'd have to do is I'd have to copy this and come over here, and then I'd have to paste it and then get this all hooked up. And there is an answer, but it is kind of inconvenient that I can't just be like, all right, compressor container, and then swap that into the grid. And I think that the best case scenario would be like opting for third-party racks or some kind of connection there, but I don't want to, be like, I'm not trying to ask for too much, but I do think that grid racks make sense in the case of just using the grid as a whole. And it would definitely make me want to return to it more often because I don't have to build a compressor from scratch every time or pull up a compressor, cut it, put it back in, if that makes sense. So the next thing I think is a very small feature, and I would love them so much if they just added this. I don't think that it needs to be anything crazy, but as most of you all know, this is actually funny because this keeps a lot of people from actually coming to Bitwig that I've talked to personally. So, if you're listening, Bitwig, please heed this. You cannot change the pitching via semitones or anything while this is in repitch mode. And I really just want the ability to hone in on this and be like +1, +2, and have it transpose in a way that would either stretch the audio or I guess play it faster or play it slower. And this seems like a very small thing. And of course you can still pitch it with here, but I'm not really trying to do guesswork. You can do octaves if you scale this by 50 to 200%, because it's, you know what I mean, it's going to kind of push it as to cycle it around of like what it initially is. But even still, like, it's very difficult to try to pitch things if you aren't familiar with how to do that in the first place. And even then you have to take an EQ and be like, where's the fundamental, and then try to finite things being like, oh, this needs to be in B, and wait for the resonant thing to come up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. It should explain that it's a minor inconvenience. That would be a huge game changer, and it's something that I think is holding a lot of people coming from Ableton. They're really reluctant to switch over because of this specific feature. So yeah, speaking of, I do think that the next thing that I would like to see, again, this would be a bigger update, is a slicer. I know that some people have posted how they did it inside of the grid and XYZ, and you can, slice to multi-sample or like have something chop automatically, which the new audio features of the warping is awesome. So let's just take that algorithm and then let's place it inside of the grid and put a slice mode in it. So that way we can do it non-destructively. That just makes sense, right? That would be super awesome. It would be even better if we had the combination of like multi-sample with slicing. So that way we can slice between loops. It seems pretty awesome when you think about it. And for things like, I don't know, finding the right drum break or finding IDM glitches and then breaking sound and whatever, I do think that would be one of the most like killer features that Bitwig could possibly add as a means for people that like to do resampling, for, myself and others included. So the next couple of things is very small, and I don't see them adding this, but this is my own personal flair. If you look behind this and you have a timeline here, you'll see that regardless of what tempo this is, this says 85, but let's pretend it's 185. You'll see that this clip is confined behind the ruler here, even if you have a real-time ruler actually, but behind the BPM. So one thing that I would love to see is maybe the ability to switch this over to the original tempo's BPM, because for a DJ purpose, let's say I've got something at 140 and then I've got something at 85. I want to be able to unwarp that audio, but count 4 bars in with a quantization, so that way I can just make a jump and play everything in its original tempo, which would be really cool. Or I could loop something that's, say, again, 140 with the time signature of 4 bars. So it's 4 bars in 140, and then it will jump to 4 bars in 85 without being, I guess, like a slave to the master tempo. Dash Glitch has a workaround to this, which is really awesome, but even still, it's very tedious, and it's not really something that I really want to go through. So having the ability to even just, have this set to the time that's in the original tempo would be really awesome. And furthermore, something else that would be cool is if you can just set this to choke clips. So it kind of works in a similar way, and there's also 2 different views of how you can set things up. So for example, this clip launcher actually looks a little bit different than if you were to do this one. You change the view from going from horizontal to vertical, and I'm not upset about that. But if I can just have everything on here and be like, yo, conform to clip 1, that would be awesome. The workaround behind that is to just use like a drum rack or something and to put everything in a sampler or whatever, but even still, it's not quite as convenient. So the next one that we have is track defaults. Wouldn't it be lovely if I can go right click, add new audio track, and then there's an EQ/limiter right on there. Very easy thing to add. Just give us that, so that way anytime I pull up a new instrument track, I can pull up Faceplant. That one's really easy. Finally, we've got one more that I think would be really cool to fix, and this one was actually brought up to me by Nolan, but if you have a fade on here on this clip, then you actually can't change the volume. And this is just one of those workflow things that's kind of inconvenient. You have to find the space here in order to be able to manage that. So if we can kind of just like leave this across the board, or even hold Option or Shift or so to be able to adjust the gain, then that would be amazing. So really, that's all I have. These are the only things that I think like Bitwig could really use in order to move to the next level. And if you've watched the video of features that I had listed from before, skins, blah, 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 whatever, I do think those are still viable, but I think that these would probably take priority. And I'm also open to different suggestions or surprises that we all know that Bitwig has in the future. So in any case, I'm not being ungrateful. These are just things that I would like to see since a new update just came out. And hopefully we see some of these features implemented in, future versions of Bitwig. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all in the next one.